Chapters 12 to 15 of Tristram Shandy, Volume 3. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Julie van Mulligan. The Life and Opinions of Tristram Shandy, Gentleman, Volume 3, by Laurence Sterne. Chapter 12. But to return to my mother. My uncle Toby's opinion, madam, that there could be no harm in Cornelius Gallus, the Roman praetor's lying with his wife, or rather the last word of that opinion, for it was all my mother heard of it, caught hold of her by the weak part of the whole sex. You shall not mistake me, I mean her curiosity. She instantly concluded herself the subject of the conversation, and with that prepossession upon her fancy, you will readily conceive every word my father said was accommodated either to herself or her family concerns. Pray, madam, in what street does a lady live who would not have done the same? From the strange mode of Cornelius's death, my father had made a transition to that of Socrates, and was giving my uncle Toby an abstract of his pleading before his judges. It was irresistible, not the oration of Socrates, but my father's temptation to it. He had wrote the Life of Socrates. This book my father would never consent to publish. 'Tis a manuscript, with some other tracts of his, in the family, all or most of which will be printed in due time. Himself the year before he left off trade, which, I fear, was the means of hastening him out of it, so that no one was able to set out with so full a sail, and in so swelling a tide of heroic loftiness upon the occasion, as my father was. Not a period in Socrates' oration, which closed with a shorter word than transmigration or annihilation, or a worse thought in the middle of it than to be, or not to be, the entering upon a new and untried state of things, or upon a long, a profound, and peaceful sleep, without dreams, without disturbance, that we and our children were born to die, but neither of us born to be slaves. No, there I mistake. That was part of Elise's oration, as recorded by Josephus, the Bell Judaic. Elise owns he had it from the philosophers of India. In all likelihood Alexander the Great, in his eruption into India, after he had overrun Persia, amongst the many things he stole that sentiment also, by which means it was carried, if not all the way by himself, for we all know he died at Babylon, at least by some of his marauders, into Greece. From Greece it got to Rome, from Rome to France, and from France to England. So things come round. By land carriage. I can conceive no other way. By water the sentiment might easily have come down the Ganges into the Sinus Gangeticus, or Bay of Bengal, and so into the Indian Sea, and following the course of trade, the way from India by the Cape of Good Hope being then unknown, might be carried with other drugs and spices up the Red Sea to Jodha, the port of Mecca, or else to Tor or Suez, towns at the bottom of the Gulf, and from thence by caravans to Coptos, but a 3 days' journey distant, so down the Nile directly to Alexandria, where the sentiment would be landed at the very foot of the great staircase of the Alexandrian library, and from that storehouse it would be fetched. Bless me, what a trade was driven by the learned in those days! Chapter 13. Now, my father had a way, a little like that of Jobs, in case there ever was such a man. If not, there's an end of the matter. Though, by the by, because you learned men find some difficulty in fixing the precise era in which so great a man lived, whether, for instance, before or after the patriarchs, etc., devote therefore that he never lived at all, is a little cruel. 'Tis not doing as they would be done by, happen that as it may. My father, I say, had a way, when things went extremely wrong with him, especially upon the first sally of his impatience, of wondering why he was begot, wishing himself dead, sometimes worse. And when the provocation ran high, and grief touched his lips with more than ordinary powers, sir, you scarce could have distinguished him from Socrates himself. Every word would breathe the sentiments of a soul disdaining life, and careless about all its issues, for which reason, though my mother was a woman of no deep reading, yet the abstract of Socrates's oration, which my father was giving my uncle Toby, was not altogether new to her. She listened to it with composed intelligence, and would have done so to the end of the chapter, had not my father plunged, which he had no occasion to have done, into that part of the pleading where the great philosopher reckons up his connections, his alliances, and children, but renounces the security to be so won by working upon the passions of his judges. I have friends, I have relations, I have 3 desolate children, says Socrates. Then, cried my mother, opening the door, you have one more, Mr. Shandy, than I know of. By heaven, I have one less, said my father, getting up and walking out of the room. Chapter 14. They are Socrates' children, said my uncle Toby. He has been dead 100 years ago, replied my mother. My uncle Toby was no chronologer. So, not caring to advance one step but upon safe ground, he laid down his pipe deliberately upon the table, and rising up, and taking my mother most kindly by the hand, without saying another word, either good or bad, to her, he led her out after my father, that he might finish the éclaircissement himself. Chapter 15. Had this volume been a farce, which, unless everyone's life and opinions are to be looked upon as a farce as well as mine, I see no reason to suppose, the last chapter, sir, had finished the first act of it, and then this chapter must have been set off thus. Brrring, twing, twang, prut, prut. Yeah, it is a cursed bad fiddle. Do you know whether my fiddle's in tune or not? Prut, prut. They should be fifths. 'Tis wickedly strung. Free-ow, twing. The bridge is a mile too high, and the sound-post absolutely down. Else, trut, plut. Hark, 'tis not so bad a tone. Diddle-diddle, diddle-diddle, diddle-diddle-dum. There is nothing in playing before good judges, but there's a man there. No, not him with the bundle under his arm. The grave man in black. It's death, not the gentleman with his sword on. Sir, I had rather play Capriccio to Calliope herself than draw my bow across my fiddle before that very man, and yet I'll stake my Cremona to a Jew's trump, which is the greatest musical odds that ever were laid, that I will this moment stop 350 leagues out of tune upon my fiddle, without punishing one single nerve that belongs to him. Twaddle-diddle, twaddle-diddle, twiddle-diddle, twaddle-diddle, twiddle-diddle, prut-trut, crish, crash, crash. I've undone you, sir. But you see he's no worse. And was Apollo to take his fiddle after me, he can make him no better. Diddle-diddle, 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 hum-dum-drum. Your worships and your reverences love music, and God has made you all with good ears, and some of you play delightfully yourselves. Trut-trut, prut-trut. Oh, there is whom I could sit and hear whole days, whose talents lie in making what he fiddles to be felled, who inspires me with his joys and hopes, and puts the most hidden springs of my heart into motion. If you would borrow 5 guineas of me, sir, which is generally 10 guineas more than I have to spare, or you, Messrs. Apothecary and Tailor, want your bills paying, that's your time. End of chapters 12 to 15.